I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself. There's no way that I could even pretend to try to introduce you. You got to do that. That's all you, because your intro is like off the hook. So if you could introduce everybody in case they're unfamiliar with who you are, what you do, where you work, and most importantly, how they can contact you.
All right, so let's get right into it. I got to start with my customary boom. We're live. All right, my name is Chris Igoe, and I am a boots on the ground operator of a high performance real estate team in South Palm Beach County. And previous to that, I was a stockbroker for 20 years. So I tend to be able to pick up on patterns that are happening in the markets and the economy, and I provide commentary on that on my channel, which is quickly gaining steam on the illustrious Kevin here, who is crushing it on all.
Oh yeah, you're gonna pass me soon. I know it.
And I don't know about that, but what I will say is one of the things that I admire most about you is you constantly provide value to your audience and to really to even people not in your audience. You are a giver. You are a fountain of useful information, and so I'm happy to be your friend. And thank you for allowing me to talk to your people.
Man, I really do appreciate that. But honestly, you got to think the first time I reached out to you, I had no clue who you were. It was because you were doing all the right things. I was just in awe and admiring what you were doing, knowing how far and how much potential you had, and just wanted to connect with you just on that level.
And I appreciate it. It's funny. So the YouTube creator space, I think it's relatively small. I mean, but I've reached out to lots of people similar to the way you've reached out to me, and very few, almost none, have reciprocated the same way. It is what it is.
It's crazy. I think probably your most successful attempt was actually a paid conversation, but that paid conversation provided you with a ton of information and value, I'm sure, for trying to connect with others that just odd. I don't know why they don't want to connect, but hey.
Hey, let's not into a precedent. I'm not paying everybody to connect with them.
I would say that, what we did last year with Vid Summit was well worth the money, and being able to connect with others. I'm not even sure if you even came across another creator that won. That one we sat down and ate Subway's, the Jersey Mike sandwiches with. He was the only other creator that was in real estate that we met, right?
Yeah, and it was interesting. He's in real estate, and yet his YouTube channel has nothing to do with real estate. So, different strokes for different folks.
But I think Vid Summit was amazing just for the fact that you can connect with other people trying to accomplish the same goals as far as creating content, gaining the reach, and connecting with their audience, which you're doing an amazing job at doing.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So, yeah, Vid Summit completely opened up my eyes to, I guess, a side of YouTube that I hadn't really fully appreciated or considered because although it was cool, I mean, it was very cool hanging out with you and Tribe. That was a lot of fun. But there are so many different creators that are there that are having massive success on things that I just wouldn't think would be as topical or resonate as well. But like they've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and they've monetized their channel, and they're earning income that way. So it really is limitless what YouTube can do for you if you figure it out and get to work.
So, real quick, just a professional intro. Chris Igoe, what's full intro, realty, location, and how to contact you?
Yeah, so my team is Igoe Home Group. So if you were to search the web, you would go to igohomegroup.com, and that will take you to my real estate space. My YouTube channel is Chris Igoe One, or at Chris Igoe One, and that will take you to all of my market commentary. And I've also got a section of the channel which was very critical during the pandemic, which shows immersive tours of the communities that exist within my market space. And one of the things that's been cool is as I've kind of widened my topics that I talk about, talking about different markets within Florida is I've had an opportunity to connect with so many people who are not in my market, and then I'm able to connect them with an all-star professional wherever they might be throughout the country, but primarily Florida, and help them get what they want, which is really cool.
That's really cool. And your channel is youtube.com/at, do you know?
Chris Igoe one.
Chris Igoe #1.
Number
And
one.
number one. And every now and then I do glance at your analytics because you allow me to have access to view it. And I see that what you mentioned earlier, as far as how you built out these tours, I'm seeing now more comments coming in too, asking for more. I don't know if you've already done these tours, but more tours maybe that you haven't that you can then add to that library and collection.
Yeah, it's definitely on the list. So when I really got focused on YouTube when the pandemic was at its worst and when we were on quarantine, and it became pretty clear to me that there was going to be a mass influx of people who would want to move to this market, but everybody was stuck at home, right? So I went out and did driving immersive tours to essentially reduce the amount of time someone would have to spend if they came here. I basically did the same tour I would do with them without them. And so I really kind of got granular into showing almost, I can't say I did every neighborhood, but I did a lot. I think there's 110 videos that showcase what it's like to live in a certain area within either Broward or Palm Beach County. And yeah, it's funny, as the channel has grown, I'm starting to see more people ask for some more of those tours. So that's on my list of things to do.
Plus, it gets you an opportunity to get out and enjoy that beautiful South Florida living.
That's right. We are going to help you max out South Florida living to the fullest.
I tell you what, though, we still need to get together and get a boat and do a video.
100%. I'm dying for that. That will be fun.
And that'll make it so I got to make the 9-hour drive and not you.
Well, I'm afraid that anything that we actually film is not going to be usable because we're having too much fun.
So, again, congratulations on all the success. Keep it going. Trust in the process. I know that there were some times where you're saying, hey, what's going on with the algorithm? What's going on with my channel? What's going on with views, this, that, and the other? And you stick with it, and it pays off. I think you just had a video just the other day cross 100,000 views with only, at the time, 12,000 subscribers. So you're killing it.
Yeah, I think when we started talking, I was at probably close to 8,000 subs, and that's now almost 14,000. And yeah, so it's like anything else. You got to experiment and try different things, talk about different topics. But the more I experiment, the more I learn. And so far it looks like we're going in the right direction. But I'm not the type, and I know you're not the type. I don't quit at anything. So like I know that it will work. It's just a matter of putting in the work to figure out what it is that that will help get the optimal result.
I think the interesting thing is what constitutes working. Okay. Now, granted, we have a lot more to discuss besides just your YouTube channel, but you kind of got me on this path here. And what constitutes working may be that video that only got 500 views, but it introduced you to 500 new viewers. It redefined your channel with the algorithm. It may have gotten you some really strong in-person leads for real estate. So what works? There's more to it than just the vanity figure of the view count. I just want people to know that.
Oh yeah, that. So I was having success in my business. In fact, I completely redefined the trajectory in my business when I got into YouTube. And there was a period of probably 10 months of me posting content twice a. It was at least twice a week, but in many cases it was more than that. But I was only getting. It took 10 months for me to get my first lead. But there was only a couple hundred views on each video. But once the phone started ringing, it never stopped ringing. And so I had tremendous growth within my real estate business on far less views. Now YouTube is turning into something else, but it's still the expansion of the channel has absolutely increased my real estate business by a lot.
It's all parts of a whole, but at the end of the day, you were monetized from day one by driving the leads.
100%. So anybody who is not using YouTube for their business, I think, is making a critical error. Actually, this is a funny side note, and this is probably going to be a much longer video than we thought it was going to be. What up?
Hi, Chris.
Is World's Rock. But I was asked to speak at my daughter's school about YouTube. So I went in and one of the young girls who's in the class, my daughter is 8 years old, so they're young. But one of the girls was raised her hand and asked a question, and she said, I love YouTube. I'm a YouTuber, and I'm like, oh, that's great. She goes, but I don't know what to talk about. And I said, well, what do you like to talk about? What do you like to do? And she said, what about it? I'm gonna be having a baby sister. I, I'm like, do you have any other brothers or sisters? And she said, no. I said, oh, but you have a YouTube channel? And she said, yeah. She goes, but I normally do gaming stuff. And so I was like, well, I bet if you were to talk about what it's like to become a sister when you never had one and shared what those feelings are and your experiences around that, I would be shocked if you didn't have a lot of people who could relate to that and just have fun with it. And, it can be part of you're just sharing your story. And like the light bulb went off, and that's what I think she's doing. But you don't need to necessarily have a business to do YouTube. You can just document your passion or your stories or whatever's interesting to you, and it becomes a business. So hopefully, I hear about her in 10 years, and she's the next Mr. Beast.
Well, honestly, I'm not gonna lie. There are so many people that want to connect with other people. They want to relate. And a gamer's life or someone who enjoys gaming isn't only about gaming. They have, changes in their family, new siblings or whatever it may be, anything. So it just adds that component, which I think if you actually pay attention, I don't know if you ever watched like Think Media or Nick Nimmin or any of these film booth or any of these other channels that talk about like channel creators that talk about growing your channel. The way that it works today, the way that the algorithm works and the people are looking to connect, it's more on a personal level. So it doesn't have to be just about gaming.
Yeah, no, I agree. But again, she doesn't have to switch the channel. But I think if she leans into the story and shares what it's like, I think a lot of folks would connect with that and resonate with that.
Oh, for sure. Now let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of. I got a few questions here I want to ask you. I want to ask you honestly, please share any struggles with your success. Okay. Now you said you started your real estate business, getting into real estate at a time when we were on lockdown basically. But since then, you've had success in real estate, you've had success in YouTube, you had success in a variety of different places. Any struggles with your success internally or even externally as you are continuously growing?
Oh man, yeah. So there have been lots of growing pains over the course of the last couple of years, and to kind of again, these are all good problems to have. So nobody play the pity party for me or the world's smallest violin. But one of the biggest critical mistakes that I've made with my real estate business was scaling too early. And so I built such a massive pipeline of signed buyer brokerages from people who found me on YouTube, then hired me to help them find their dream home and dream lifestyle. That the number was staggering, and it certainly would have been far and away my biggest year, but they were signed clients. And at the time, I had a small team that was working effectively under the Remax umbrella. But because I had such a big pipeline, I decided to start and launch a brokerage. And the transition from one role to the other and not really knowing, thinking I know, but not really knowing what it takes to launch a brokerage was a massive pain point. And so I had to quickly learn through trial and error that, some of the people, places, systems, processes, this, that, and the other that I had were not optimal. And so I ended up closing that brokerage and joining KW, which has been a good fit to this point. But at some point, I do hope to be in a position to have learned from those mistakes and be able to help more people throughout the country in a much bigger way. And so, yeah, that was be careful what you ask for because you might get it, and certainly got it. And it was a priceless, multi-million dollar lesson that I think I learned. But yeah, that.
And when you say multi-million dollar lesson, you're not talking about an actual physical loss, but more of an opportunity loss.
There was so the financial hit wasn't nothing, but it certainly wasn't a multi-million dollar loss. It was more of a momentum loss, and more of a ego pride loss than anything else. Because I do have, like anything else, I'm a big target, or a lot of people know who I am. So when you go out there and say you're starting a brokerage and then it fails, there's a hit associated with that. But I do my best when my back's against the wall. I do my best when I'm the underdog. I do my best when I'm under duress, I think. And so, I figured it out and made the changes that I needed to, and now have the right people in place, have the right systems and processes in place, and I won't make that mistake again. But it was
Have you experienced now? You said that you are a target, and actually, I covered this on a video just the other day where if something. It was actually in relation to YouTube content creators, and some of them actually pulling away from the platform. And after having amassed so many subscribers and views and things like that, regardless of their reasoning behind it, personally they get attacked. Where it's like, oh, well, what happened to your channel? Or why aren't you doing it anymore? This, that, and the other, which kind of sucks sometimes, but par for the course. You got to have thick skin if you're going to be in this, especially stay in it, but maybe even thicker if you're going to try to get out of it. But with that being said, have you experienced any struggles with your success personally in real estate, in YouTube?
No, it's really well. So I think, like anybody else who captures attention on YouTube, you're going to have people that are going to say some nasty things. You're going to get some comments that are not nice, and I'm a competitor, right? So I enjoy when somebody has a comment that they want to share, and so I kind of feed off that. I actually I enjoy those comments the most because I usually put the funniest response back to them.
I'm not gonna lie. If nobody's ever seen Chris Igoe's channel and has not seen the comments, that's quite possibly my favorite part is your reply.
Yeah, yeah. So I have fun with that, but my thought process is, look, I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and if you don't like me, well, then that's okay. If you say something nasty about me, well, then I'm going to certainly respond, speaking your love language. But if not, then,
Can you imagine how many people on a daily basis come across other people that they don't like, but they don't have an ounce the courage they do when they're behind this computer and this keyboard?
no one would ever talk to me the way.
I've seen Chris. He's a big dude.
Oh man, Michelle was like, "Yeah, I've seen Chris. He's a big dude. Nobody's gonna say anything to him."
So no, they would never say that in person. But it's all good. You know what? It's part of the game. It's the ante. You want to say something stupid, with the exception of saying something bad about my family, which I would just delete immediately. It's pretty much fair game.
Now let me ask you this: we're moving over to real estate. Just real quick, high level. What is the greatest ally, and what is also the greatest challenge to agents today? And this is going to be very general because every market's different. Every agent is different. But if you could say, what's really helping agents, but what's also really challenging them as well?
So that's a great question. there has been, over the course of the last couple of years, there's been a massive explosion in people who have entered the industry thinking that this is an easy opportunity to make some money quickly. And so I think the stat is there's 90,000 agents in my market. Um, what I've seen is that those numbers have radically. There are so many non-renewals that have happened. There's so many people failing out of the business. People come in, they think it's easy, and then within 3 to 6 months they're out. So I think what has changed is the perception around um, what the trends are going to be moving forward. So, like, in case you haven't heard, there's a lot of economic uncertainty and fear that exists within the certainly within the real estate market, but really everywhere. And so I think as fear upticks, a lot of people, go running for the doors. Now, I look at that as the biggest opportunity to start, because if you're able to go to work the right way in a market where there's less competition, you're going to grow your business a heck of a lot faster.
Now, I will say that in comparison to the few other content creators and videos that I see on real estate, particularly those that are getting lots and lots of views on a regular basis, they play into that fear. As if almost there's no upside, there's no pro, there's no positive, and that can't be the case, can it?
No, that's dog shit. So there's a lot of people that are monetizing fear right now, and there are a lot of content creators that are in the space that talk about real estate that are painting a picture that is simply flawed, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to turn this light on. Give me 1 second. I'm losing my uh, get us some better lighting. Sorry about that.
All good.
Um, So, look, fear sells, right? Fear gets clicks, fear gets views, and I have always taken a realistic approach to what's happening in the market. So, I'm aware. I was a stockbroker for 20 years. I know what the patterns and what the writing on the wall looks like moving forward in many instances, and so I talk about that because there are things that are happening in the market right now. There are very changing or radically changing quickly dynamics that need to be known, need to be addressed, and need to be talked about. Because if you don't know them, well, chances are you're going to make a very bad decision based on not knowing what those things that are likely to occur are. And separate to that, um, the long-term trend on real estate, at least within my market, is going to be going higher, period, over time. So, like, when I talk to a prospective client, I want to know I want to know what their financial picture is. I want to know what their income is. I want to know what their job security is. I want to know what their savings are. I want to know what their timeline is. And then from there, I'm going to give them the worst case scenario that could be like a doomsday scenario over the course of the next 2 to 5 years, and then what it very likely looks like outside that window. But I'm never going to be smart enough to be able to tell anybody that I know when the bottom of the market is or I know when the top of the market is. But I think people appreciate that I give them a realistic perspective of what's happening now, what's likely to happen, and what the future looks like based on what's happened in the past.
Well, I will say that from my point of view, I really do appreciate that because I don't want to be engaged with an agent who's only solely concerned about his commission and not my well-being as a buyer or a seller for that matter. And we've also realized and experienced that real estate is going to be, it's not a one and done. And you could potentially be building a great relationship and expanding your network and having repeat buyers and sellers. But there's no way to pull that off if all you care about is your commission and you put them in a bad position. They'll definitely resent you for that.
100%. So I think every business is not real estate, is a relationship business, and I think it's critical that you I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I got a phone call from somebody who found me on YouTube. They asked me to come over, list their property, and help them buy something else. And I could tell that they had no clue what was happening in terms of the market or the economy or really anything. And so I asked a couple kind of qualifying questions, which is, are you aware that when you sell this property, which you've owned for the last 25 years, your tax rate is going to jump astronomically? And she's like, "No, I have no idea. How do you know that?" And I said, "Well, I'll walk you through it." So I took her to the property appraiser site, and I kind of did it with her on the phone, and she went away. I said, "Well, that's just the beginning stages of what's going to change. Now let's talk about what your home insurance is probably going to jump up to." And so I gave her a ballpark figure on what that would look like. So I talked myself out of listing and a potential purchase because she wanted to buy one of the homes that I have listed. And I talked her out of it because it's not right for her. And so I feel a fiduciary responsibility, although I'm not a fiduciary, to just be totally transparent with, because I've got other folks who are, much higher net worth. They don't give a shit what it costs. They want what they want when they want it. And if the market goes to zero tomorrow, they don't care. They're going to live there the next, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. And then it's going to go to one of their kids. So, it's not, everybody doesn't fit in the same bucket per se, but I have found that by being totally, I treat everybody like it's my parents. So, here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. You make the decision as to whether it's right for you or not. And if it's right, great. And if it's not, well, then I'm going to talk you out of it.
I like that. I like that. And you earlier you said fear gets clicks. And fear gets clicks, but once you're inside, it's a completely different story. And that's where you provide all this value, all this information, good, bad, and different, to help people be able to make their best judgment call on what they want to do moving forward. But then when you mentioned how we're seeing non-renewals in real estate and agents dropping out, I wonder if the fear that has really no honorable documentation to substantiate their claims and back it up, which only perpetuates more fear, uncertainty, and what's the other one? FUD, fear, uncertainty, and I can't remember what the D stands for. But do you think that these other videos maybe have gotten to agents and made them rethink their career path? Not just buyers and sellers, but agents have been watching these videos and they're drinking the Kool-Aid and they're getting out.
Well, so the one thing that I've learned is that, and I went through this in a different market when I was a stockbroker, but when the great financial crisis happened and Ford was at $1 and Bank of America was at 2, and it was the end of the world and everything was coming. I mean, there was tremendous panic that existed across the board for everybody. That's when I made the most money as a stockbroker, because I also knew that unless the country is actually going out of business for real, which I don't think we're there yet. That I'm going to bet on America, and I'm going to find the best companies that are trading at a discount and load the boat on them for my clients. And again, that there's suitability that exists, and there's all kinds of different things that exist as a stockbroker. But I look at it from the same perspective. Real estate always trades. It is always a good market for someone. And so if the market goes screaming, higher, which it might, well, then it's going to be good for sellers. And if it tanks and gets cut in half, well, then it'll be good for buyers and investors. And it's always good for somebody. So my job is to figure out who it's good for and then serve and support them at the highest level.
I don't want to do it on this video because we'll be here for a very long time. But on another video, we do need to talk about stocks and investing, and quite possibly your experience in that time frame compared to today. Where today, I feel like we're in a little bit of a no man's land where stocks and betting big on good companies is kind of hard to do with all these meme stocks and pump and dump and all the uncertainty that's going on. It's kind of hard to even know which way's up.
Well, so my non-professional opinion, not being in the business, there's going to be a massive correction within the equities market, and I think there's likely going to be a correction. Um, well, I absolutely. There's already been a correction in the real estate market to the tune of trillions of dollars throughout the country. Now, my particular market has been more insulated for a variety of different reasons. It tends to be a more affluent client that lives there, but it's also supported by the fact that there's no more land to develop. So, in other places, you might have an oversupply of homes. In my particular market, there's an undersupply of homes, and so supply and demand. And it also happens to be where most people want to move that are coming from the Northeast, from the Midwest, and from Canada and California. Like everybody wants to be in, Southeast Palm Beach County or, close to it.
They do for sure, despite the potential risks. I think you had a video just the other day about flooding and homeowners insurance. That doesn't keep them out.
Well, it's crazy. So I did that video, and then I did it while I went and took my kids to go see Taylor Swift out in Tampa. So I had it scheduled and ready for release. While I was gone, I missed a rainstorm, and it wasn't a tropical storm, it wasn't a hurricane, it was just an out of the blue rainstorm. It dumped 22 inches of rain on Fort Lauderdale. So massive flooding that existed or that happened in that market. And so I've been talking a lot about what the home insurance market looks like. Well, I can promise you, there's going to be it's going to be a nightmare for homeowners to get those claims paid, this, that, and the other. And Citizens is not set up with enough money to be um, really fund. So it'll be interesting to see how they actually handle it. But there is a big risk to not just our market, but every market as far as flooding is concerned. But again, we're in South Florida, so we've got hurricanes and this, that, and the other. But also, the people who are moving here know that.
Yeah, and we've talked briefly about liquidity crisis concerns. Obviously, the liquidity crisis is probably going to come from these insurance companies first and foremost, and then trickle down to some of these homeowners who get left holding the bag. But as you said, it'll affect everybody. Do you think that what happens in Florida with the insurance companies and these claims will permeate throughout other states, basically trying to like almost subsidize the insurance policies?
Well, so in the video that I did, one of the guys who called was one of like the big short investors. He did an analysis which I thought was pretty eye opening. So I kind of played into the title of is the Florida market going to be underwater? I don't think I'm not smart enough to be able to tell you is the global sea level rising that's going to cause the state of Florida to be. I don't know that. I don't buy into that bullshit. To be honest, I don't think any of that's going.
Thank you.
I don't think. But what I do think has been underpriced into most models is the risk for flooding. So, like the storm that hit us that gave us 22 inches of rain, I don't think most markets have priced that in the right way. And it doesn't take much and I mean, this could be the middle of the country in the middle of nowhere. You might not be surrounded by a lake or the ocean or whatever, but if you have some other active nature, whether it be too much snow or whatever, a flooding event, well, that's a real risk. And I don't think that's been priced in the right way.
Or insufficient storm drainage system that backs up and can cause the same damage.
Yeah, well, exactly my point. I don't think the systems in totality are built out for unusual weather patterns. So, like to your point, you could have a drainage system or a sewage system that works great up until it gets 4 inches of rain, but you're only tolerant for three. Well, okay, good. Now you got four and you're fucked. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
But that could be hundreds of millions of dollars worth of damage to the local market.
But odds are in those situations, they wouldn't have flood insurance anyway because they're thinking there's no way we're going to get flood waters here. We're not, we're landlocked inside this, like, but it could happen.
100%. Now, what you didn't ask, but what I think the biggest threat is, or one of the things that I see happening, I mean, it's absolutely going to happen, is it's got nothing to do with flooding, but it has a lot to do with pensions, retirement, and commercial real estate.
Okay. All right. You want to touch on that now, or you want to save that for a video you got queued up? I know you got a video queued up.
Well, I'll talk about it endlessly because I think everybody needs to hear about it, and I think it's critical to understand. Which is, I talk a lot about the big money that's in the market, and a lot of people will ask me questions about what that means. And so, institutional money, like the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars that are out there that are managed by professional institutions, seek safe return, but they're looking for return. And over the course of the last, I don't know, 40, 50 years, one of the best places for these institutions to park their money is in best of breed, triple class or triple A rated commercial real estate. And so you've got the building owners or you've got the debt associated with those buildings, which they're two different things, but they're tied into many of these commercial buildings that are out there. And if you look at some of the places where they exist, like California, it's a ghost town. And so if you look at, and it's not just California, it's basically everywhere, the tenancy rates that are in a lot of these commercial buildings that were once AAA rated have fallen off a cliff. And with the cost of money having increased with the Fed tightening their Fed funds rates and their policies, well, now where a landlord or a building owner was able to refinance and do some things, now they can't because the cost of borrowing money is so much more expensive. So we saw this play out with SVB and some of the regional banks, and that's going to get worse because inflation, although they came out with this big win number, oh, inflation went down last month, it was 5%. So it's not accelerating at the same rate as it was previously, but it's 5%, which means it's still high and it's still growing. So even if they were to get the number that they want, which is 2%, it's still 2% on top. It hasn't gone down at all. It's 2% from where it was before.
Exactly.
So it's like this number, although they're trying to window dress it as being this good thing, it's completely out of control. And I know there are a lot of people that are feeling that now. That's only going to get worse. Household savings are at an all-time minimum. Credit card debt is at an all-time high. But what we still haven't addressed is the fact that a lot of these people, well, in my market, I talk about they feel like they're equity rich in the fact that their real estate has gone up so much over the last few years. That's true. But they also feel like they're protected because their pension or their 401k is also on paper, it looks great. Well, when the commercial real estate defaults, and it will, well, then these pensions, and I'll take it a step further, and Social Security, which is underfunded, neither one of these giant juggernauts amounts of money that hundreds of millions of people have invested in for decades, well, it's not there. So what happens? Well, I'll tell you what happens. The government bails them out. And the government, because they're not going, because I can tell you if they don't do that, if you thought the riots that happened in France were bad, the country will be, I mean, there will be people in the street. If you thought you had a pension fund that was worth, I'm making up numbers, $1 million, and you find out, well, it's really only worth 200,000. I got news for you. Your family, whoever, the neighborhood, they're burning cars in the streets, and there's massive fucking hell to pay. So,
Now,
but the government won't allow that to happen. So what will they do? They'll print money.
and I think that they're going to play this little game like they play with SVB. It's not a bailout. They'll come up with some insurance program that exists somewhere, shift some money around. They won't call it a bailout, but essentially that's exactly what they're doing, especially when they over-insure depositors in this SVB collapse beyond the FDIC limit. But to your point on inflation, I try to make this common sense comparison, just like really get people to understand what it means. And that is if the Fed were to come out today and say that inflation was 2%, how does that change your life? How does that change your bank account? How does that change the money in your hand right now? It doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
Now, also, what?
No, you go.
No, also, I saw how Wells Fargo almost doubled from last year to this year their reserves in anticipation for these corporate mortgage defaults. So, yes, there's going to be a corporate real estate collapse, potentially. Even Elon Musk is a part of this, with Twitter not being able to pay for their offices after he bought them. But have some of these doom and gloom real estate channels who've been focused on the housing market missed the boat altogether, and they really should have been focusing on commercial real estate?
I don't think most of the content creators that are putting out that they've found what works for them, and they're going to beat that drum until they can't beat it anymore. But you know, I at least am honest enough to acknowledge I'm not an analyst. I'm not an economist. I'm not. There's lots. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a doctor. There's lots of things that I'm not. But I'm going to tell you the truth based on what I see. And I think a lot of these people put themselves out there as an authority or an expert or as a qualified um, person to be able to talk about the things they are, when in fact, all they're doing is getting more views.
Yeah, but I mean, if you create a channel and you make really enticing thumbnails and you put your real estate agent number and you maybe even put some plaques on the wall, you know what you're talking about, right? All right, last one. Last one. I got to read this to you. You probably already saw it. Fox News reports that Biden rule will redistribute high risk loan costs to homeowners with good credit.
I just talked about this in a video the other day. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are now penalizing you if you've got if you've got good credit and you've got a big deposit. Well, now you're going to have to pay more fees to do so. But if your credit sucks and or is, I'm not going to say sucks. If it sucks or is less than optimal and you have a 5% deposit, well, you're going to get preferential treatment and preferential fees because, because that's what Biden does, because he's a fucking moron.
Wait, say it again in case they didn't hear you in the back.
Well, I'm going to go one step further than that. Because a lot of people on my channel will talk about this is all Biden's fault, and he's the devil, and this, that, and the other thing. This is not Biden's fault. He's made some poor choices that I don't agree with 100%, and he certainly hasn't helped anything with a lot of the policies that he's created. But this didn't start with him by any stretch of the imagination. This has been going on for decades and can be traced back in some form to when Nixon, depegged the dollar from gold. So this is nothing new, but it is accelerating and it's getting worse. The thing and I guess we can end it on this because this is already a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But here's the miracle fix that no politician is going to talk about, and what's definitively going to happen because it's the only way out. All of this stimulus, all of these things that have happened are all going to come back to us in the form of higher taxes. That is what is going to happen in the future. So if you think it's bad now, wait until they change the tax code and you're really fucked.
Whoa, there's the title of the video. Wait until they change the tax code and then you're really fucked. Well, I hear you, and we do need to end on that because we are going over, but I'm going to go ahead and ask, can we do this again sometime real soon? But what good are all the higher taxes if all they're going to do is then take that money and send it? This has nothing to do with stimulus or CARES Act or any of this other stuff that actually stays within this country. But what happens when they raise the taxes only to use that money to then fund other countries and their bullshit?
I mean, it reminds me of a song that REM put out back in the 80s, and it goes a little something like this. It's the end of the world as we know it, and
I love how you're covering songs on your videos now. What was that song about Ron DeSantis?
I don't know. I you got the dropped a bomb on me, Ronnie.
Oh man, my buddy Stephen Gardner. I don't know if you saw. We had an interview I put up yesterday with Stephen Gardner, and he said that he actually has documented proof about a lot of this money going to Ukraine being laundered from United States support to Ukraine, and then one of the biggest recipients being Zelensky. So it's crazy.
Don't get me started. I mean, if we want to start talking about the military-industrial complex, we're going to be here for days.
We'll save that for the next one. We'll save it for the next one. Hey, Chris, I appreciate it. Real quick, I want to end my video on a high note. Can you send this out?
Can I send this out? Yeah.
Yeah, send this out with your outro.
Oh. Let's see. How do I end this here? And until next time, peace.
Appreciate it, man. I'm a end.
That is not it. That is not it. Please subscribe to Kevin's channel. Check out his next video. And until next time.